Do you recognize this map? Well, of course you do. It's the iconic world of Norrath that we all know, love, admire, and collect. But did you know there are secret messages hidden in some of the maps? We continue our conversation with the creator of those maps, Schmitz. He's also the artist behind creating and animating the creatures of original EverQuest. And 20 years ago, the second EverQuest MMO launched. I'm not talking about EverQuest II, I'm reviewing EverQuest Online Adventures. And you'll see Befallen before it fell. You're watching the EverQuest Show.
I'm on top of the world and now I'm living, and the good just gets better, keeps it giving. Not even close to the end, it's just beginning. Life is getting lighter while the days are getting brighter, yeah. Celebrate life and get excited about good times and good living. Come on, shout it out. Hey! Take it up, take it over, take it out of control. Today I'm freeing my soul and now you got me singing. Oh, hey!
From the EverQuest Show studios, welcome to episode 16 of the EverQuest Show. I'm Fading. Artist Schmitz was responsible for creating many of the iconic monsters that inhabit Norrath. Last episode, he explained the process of designing those creatures, making them unique to EQ. Once those creatures were designed, drawn, and the 3D model was created, it was Rick's job to bring them to life and animate them.
I was hired on EverQuest to be a character artist, character design, and animation. All the player characters, all the monsters, all of the NPCs, the vast majority of them I designed and I animated. As I'm drawing a character, I'm thinking about it, I'm considering the personality of the thing, and then by the time I'm animating it, I already have some kind of notion in my head of what I want to do. I get a piece of paper and I'll do like a quick kind of storyboard, really rough thumbnail of how I want the character to act or react or something, depending on the complexity of the animation. So, and this is particularly true if a character has like extra legs or something like that. A lot of the death animations, those would be much more complex. Almost everything is moving as the character is becoming lifeless on the ground. Every joint is bouncing, and that took a lot more concentration than an attack or something, which is really straightforward and just kind of, okay, I'm going to make him slash. So he's going to start out here and he's going to end here. And, and then I might have a few adjustments along the way to give it a nice arc. If I remember correctly, it's walk, run, probably 2 idols, a take damage, and a death. And then, there might be some extra ones. So spellcaster will cast a spell. Maybe bosses might have something that's a little more complex or have maybe a couple different spells that they can carry. The idle animations have 2 aspects. There's 2 different idle animations. There's a standard idle animation, which is just the character standing there and breathing. And then there's a second idle animation that pops up randomly. For example, the Cyclops, he stands there and he breathes and stuff. And then when the second idle animation comes up, he kind of looks to the right and goes over like this, and then he looks to the left, and he looks over there, and then he comes back to his idle position. And for the ogre, the break should just be reaching back and scratching his butt. And I mean, what else? I mean, that's what ogres do, right? They're gross, and they have no finesse.
I was surprised to learn that early on, EverQuest used motion capture for some of their animation.
Early on, we thought we were going to do most of the animation with motion capture, and in reality, what we learned quickly, though, was that the motion capture generally wasn't as exciting. It wasn't as interesting to look at, and it was just too much data. It took more time to clean up than to just make it from scratch. When we were through with the process and the game released, it still had a lot of the motion capture there. But the motion capture was fun. I tried to do some of the monster stuff and some of the goblin stuff, I think. Motion capture for the goblin is still retained in the game. They were actually literally ping pong balls that were attached to this, knee pads and elbow pads and this sort of thing. And you put them on, and you'd be walking around. And it was fairly accurate to the motion that we were doing. But when it came time to do a death animation, do a death action, Well, there's ping pong balls all over me. I could really get hurt. So when it came time to do the goblin death, I just kind of crumbled so that I wouldn't get hurt. That's why the goblins die with their butt sticking out, because I didn't want to fall over on myself.
But of course, as the game launched and the developers got better and better at their craft, especially specific to EverQuest, they were able to push the envelope of what they could do within the game.
EQ had been live for a bit before we started Kunark. We kind of realized that we had been too conservative with our estimates on how much we could get away with, and how many joints a character could have, how many polygons a character could be made up of, how large the textures could be. So it freed us to do more elaborate stuff. So for example, the goblins of EQ are very kind of primitive in their shape and in the number of polygons and the number of joints. They have fists, they don't have fingers, their hands are just blocks. With Kunark, we realized that we could do a lot more. So the Kunark goblins, they have articulated fingers. They have ears that actually animate and can emote. They even have this ridiculous tongue that's flopping around all over the place. They have a loincloth that actually has a few joints in it, so it can sort of sway back and forth as he's kind of tromping around. We were able to just add a lot more life and energy to the characters because we weren't as limited as we were before. It was exciting. It was super fun. Sarnak, that was something that I wanted him to be a dragon first. I wanted somebody to be able to look at him and go, that's a dragon, but it's like sort of a guy too. and that's another example of where we could really go crazy, because his tail itself had more joints than, like half the characters of the original EQ. And then, of course, the undead Sarnak, they had a unique set of animations as well as a unique model, so we were able to do some more crazy stuff with them as well.
When you first started playing EverQuest, you may have looked at some of these iconic maps. These are some of the cloth maps that came in some of the original game boxes, Lucklin and Plains of Power. But did you know that all of these maps were also done by Rick Schmitz?
I did a lot of them. I couldn't name them all for you right now, but pretty much everything up to Dungeons of Norrath. I did the map for EverQuest Adventures. I also did a lot of maps for a lot of the zones, as I recall. They're all black and white, but the main maps were really a kick. We were getting down the home stretch. We were finishing up the game. As I recall, we weren't actually getting a lot from game design at that point because, they were hunkered down and just trying to finish levels and things like that. So we had a little bit of spare time, and they realized that they wanted a map. It didn't occur to anybody to hire a freelancer to do it. And even if they did, the person would be unfamiliar with the product. It probably just wouldn't work very well. And I was the resident drawing guy. So I was asked to do the map. It was really fun. Pen and ink, those are where I live most of the time. It was really drawn in pen and ink and then scanned, and then the color was added. It was a natural thing for me. I seem to recall having a blast with it, just trying to get the detail relatively right. It's not super 100% accurate, of course. It's meant to just be more sort of representative. But it is the world at a glance, and you can look at it, and you can sort of get an idea of where you are. And as you go into a new zone, it's like, okay, now I'm here. And my thought process, when somebody asked me to make a fantasy map, it's like, okay, well then I'm going to make it an old-timey map, and I'm going to have sea monsters in the water, and I'm going to have a compass that shows north, and I'm going to do all that kind of traditional map stuff. Have the checkerboard pattern on the edges, and have something that shows some kind of measurement of distance, although again, it's not representative of anything at all. Photoshop was the go-to tool for everything we were doing as far as 2D was concerned. But the map was probably the biggest file I ever worked on up to that point. So when I saved, it would chug on it for a few minutes before it was done saving and I could continue working. It was a real kick to work on, but it was such a big file. I was scrolling around to be able to see stuff, to be able to work on detail and that sort of thing. If you have a copy of the original map, you can find on the map, I think it's in the desert row, you can find a little tiny bit of text which is it's basically the names of some of the zones that I had reduced down but never turned off that layer or never tossed that layer. So it's actually still in there somewhere, but it's just on I think it's just on the first original map of the original game.
So what about those secret messages in the map I teased earlier?
There was a map for, I want to say Velius. By the time we got to Velius, I had gone into a font maker and I had made a font for several different of the main player races for the game. And so I decided, oh, well, I'm going to add some little background text on here just to give it a little bit of flavor and stuff. I'm making it. Nobody's going to know what it says. So I'm going to have it be messages that matter to me. So I had like messages to my family, basically. There's like, I love you, Sue, and hi, Denise. So if you look at those weird little fonts in there, and if you feel like trying to decipher them, it's a one-to-one alphabet swap. It's not like a real code or anything, but it's kind of fun.
Rick Schmitz was responsible for not only all of the EverQuest maps for Dragons of Norrath, but also the maps for EverQuest Online Adventures. On February 11, 2023, EverQuest Online Adventures celebrated 20 years since its launch date. Now, unfortunately, the second EverQuest MMO has now been sunset, but there's still a loyal fan base trying to keep the memory of EQOA alive. One of those fans is here to help tell the story of Tuneria.
EverQuest Online Adventures, now online for PlayStation 2, rated T.
I am Alutra. I've played quite a bit of EverQuest Online Adventures, also some original EQ1 EverQuest. EQOA is absolutely my favorite video game of all time. EQOA was advertised as approximately 500 years before EQ1. Kinos, Freeport, Norrath is there, Hallis is there, High Pass Hold is there. There are several dungeons like Guck and Blackburrow, places like that. EQA has its own version of Plane of Disease and Plane of Sky, places like that. So, but one dungeon that is in both and that's interesting to look at is Befallen, is known as the Temple of Light. It's where the Paladins live hundreds of years before EQ1. And it's just a jaunt, probably about a 10-minute run from Freeport. You run across the mountains and you find the location of what would in the future of EQ1 be Befallen. And you go in there and you can actually see some of the rooms are laid out almost identical, but it's before it's ruined. It's all nice and neat, and it's very interesting to see some of those places. There are a lot of dragons. There's Vox, that's a very popular dragon. Nagafin's in there. I think a lot of the popular, I want to say a solid 8 to 10 dragons.
But PC gamers are very different from console gamers, and that's something that designers of EverQuest Online Adventures had to contend with when building the game.
EQA was developed specifically for couch playstyle, so you might be familiar with lots of PC gaming sitting at your desk, but they were looking for a more casual audience. The PlayStation 2 was exploding at the time, and so they figured, hey, why not? There were some challenges in the beginning with having to get a network adapter, and it was geared towards casual play. And I think that they were trying to make a game that you could get in and out and have fun in 20 minutes. And the funny thing was, I was able to lay in bed and play a version of EverQuest, and it was kind of the laziness was a winning factor at the time. But I was able to go and explore and play without having to sit at my desk. So. And it was fulfilling. It was a simpler version at first, but then it felt like you were able to do more in a short period of time. Maybe the leveling up was a little bit faster, the combat was a little bit faster, and so if you got a busy schedule, you could jump in and out pretty quickly. Obviously, as you get on later into the game and you're raiding with your guilds and stuff, that's not possible. But definitely early on in the game, you can have fun questing, and feeling like you accomplished something in a short period of time. So a lot of the things from EverQuest 1 are in EQA, but some differences are a lot of things are trimmed down. There's a smaller group size. Some of the classes aren't there. Some of the extra activities aren't there. But one thing that was extra magical about EQA was that it was a giant, massive open world. It would take you hours to go from one side to another side without any loading screens, unless you died or you ported somewhere that was like a different like Plane of Sky or something. you could walk or run for a very long time without hitting any sort of load screen. You could go into a dungeon. It's not instance at all. You could go all the way down to the bottom of a dungeon, run out, run across the land.
And EverQuest Online Adventures, the second MMO in the EverQuest universe, was active for almost a decade. During its success, it saw a single expansion called Frontiers, but on March 29th of 2012, EverQuest Online Adventures was sunset.
I found out by checking my email and getting an email from SOE, and it was a pretty intense level of devastation, because over the years I had jumped in and out of EQOA. I didn't play it solidly the whole 9 years. I had kids, I had work things that happened. I always missed it when I wasn't playing. I was always thinking about it. I always compared it to every single other video game that I played, but I realized suddenly that I had to do something about it, because I had to record it or do something, save the memory of it, because I felt like it was too important to the game to just let go in that moment. And a lot of my buddies in the game were devastated also. Everybody was pretty upset about it, to be honest. We only had the 30-day notice. We were given a 30-day notice to say our goodbyes, really.
For most of us, we've played a game that is now around for nearly 24 years, and it comes as no surprise that games do get sunset. And that thought has crossed our mind for what happens for EverQuest or EverQuest II. We can learn a little bit from what happened with EverQuest Online Adventures.
I actually have video footage of the very last hour. I believe that there were a lot of people in various parts of the game. Some people were opting to rest their character in their home location or one of their favorite spots of the game. I stayed in Freeport, where most of the people were hanging out, and it's a sad moment. To watch the video, it's a really kind of devastating, sad moment, because you see us all going, trying to say goodbye until they switched it off at midnight. There's this eerie feeling of the world gone, but you know that we're all still there. We're all still right there, looking at our screens, really in amazement of how can this be gone,
Alutra mentioned Befallen 500 years before EverQuest Live, so I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at Befallen through hundreds of years throughout Norrath and multitudes of games. EverQuest's 24th anniversary is right around the corner, and the EverQuest Show is only getting bigger and better. I cannot wait to show you what I have planned for our anniversary episodes, including some big interviews.
For EQ1, the TLP for EQ in May, it's going to be an experimental year.
You do not want to miss them, so make sure you're subscribed so you will know when that drops. And also leave a comment below if you have a story idea or you just want to comment and leave me a message as well. If you want to support the channel, please share this video. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on that anniversary episode very soon.
We gotta be the best we can be. And though sometimes we don't want to, still we gotta chase our dreams, reach up and reach high, because we're gonna pull through and give it all we got, even though it can seem hard to catch and make it happen. But we can't start sliding, come on, and do what you gotta do to fight on. So no matter what comes your way, nothing can ruin your day or even wipe a smile away. And by the time I'm up and out of my bed, I got 100 new ideas floating around in my head, with the hope for tomorrow, a dream that I can see of all the awesome things and great people we could be. Or maybe by the music or the songs that I sing, I'll change the world with the simple message that it will bring.